Yeah. Let's go.
My name is Sheik Mozart and I'm here to explode important media topics with kids ministry pros. Whether you got a mega budget or just minimal dough. Welcome to the Kids Church Visual Show.
Hello and welcome to the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart. I'm Sheik Mozart. This is the show that wants to help you visually communicate the gospel to your kids. This episode of the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart is the first of two about presentation apps. In this episode, we're going to discuss some criteria to think about when choosing your presentation app. But first, we're going to go live to ask you, what's the oldest display method that you remember in church? Let's go. What is the oldest display method that you remember in church? So this might be from when you were a kid. This might be something that you used early in ministry.
The oldest one that we've probably, that I recall, would be one of the old flannel graph type stuff. Matter of fact, I had one of our volunteers. She retired about 5 years ago, and she was teaching our Sunday school classes, and she was still using them.
I have to say, I remember using in my early days of kids ministry, using the overhead projector with the gel slides that you'd put on there, and then you could use a marker and mark on it, and it would just basically, it was just shining a light on a wall. It was, I don't know, you had this little square at the bottom, it had a giant light, and then you had this mirror that you could rotate to get it out onto the wall. We used a lot of those. We'd print, images on those little transparent, pieces of gel paper. It was wild.
I grew up in the age of overhead projectors. And I remember my church that I grew up in, it was like you were the it kid if you got to church early enough and you asked the worship leader if you could change the slides. So I remember being 8 years old, being entrusted with the packet of little transparent slides and having to switch them over at the right time so that everybody could read it.
Chalkboard, probably, writing things on chalkboard. I remember that. And I remember a lot of puppets. So yeah, chalkboard and puppets.
Besides flannel graphs, which I'm still a huge fan of flannel graphs because there's magic to it and kids are just blown away by it. Besides flannel graphs, honestly, just drawing on a board, and I still do that one today. Because like I said, there's a powerful link between, because memory is just association. So if you can draw a picture with things and concepts you're saying, it triggers retention in a lot of ways. But I saw either drawing pictures on a board or flannel graph.
I would say the oldest that I remember using in church when I was in preschool would be a felt board or the overhead projector. My mom was a preschool teacher too. So, anything that she just would make and draw and cut, anything that someone could use the overhead projector to put up on the paper and draw something, that was always really cool to me. But the felt board was always consistent. Hand puppets, right? That kind of stuff. Stick puppets.
It's a method that I still use maybe twice a year, and it's an overhead old glass projector. And I put it up on the screen, and there's just certain visuals with the shadow puppets and the shadows that I can still do that just still put the kids in awe because they're like, oh, really? Cool. And I'm like, or the felt boards too. We use those.
Felt board. Hands down, felt board. I mean, and they can get pretty extravagant, and some of them are really good, and they're coming back. Used selectively, but felt board, 100%.
In your church's adult services, it's possible that they're using the latest and greatest software to display sermon slides, worship lyrics, and other visuals. And while your kids' ministry certainly deserves the best, there might be a few reasons why you would prefer to go with a more lightweight option. So here are 3 things to consider when choosing a presentation app. Cost. This is an obvious one. You need a presentation app that can fit within your ministry budget. Now, before you go searching for the cheapest app on the market, you may want to check with your church media people and see if they have a site license for the presentation software that they use. That way, you can get some really great software without having to curtail your snack spending. Ease of use. You want your presentation software to be easy to use, not only for you, but for the people that will be running it in your kids' church service. And more than likely, that will be a volunteer. Make sure that whatever presentation app you use will make life easier on you and your team and not more difficult. Support. At some point, your presentation app might not behave as it should. Maybe it'll freeze for a little while, or it could even crash your computer. You need to know that when something goes wrong, you're able to fix it quickly, or at least call on someone who can. It might also help to look for a presentation app from a company that is willing to talk you through any surprise or issues, or has a customer forum where you can connect with other people that might have gone through what you're facing. All right, and welcome back to the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart. I'm Sheik Mozart, and it is my great honor to introduce one of the greatest to ever do it. Media pastor, media extraordinaire, Jonathan Perez. Jonathan, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Welcome.
Awesome.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Jonathan, so tell me a little bit, before we get started, tell me a little bit about your experience in ministry and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, so I've been at Faith Assembly in Orlando it's going to be 14 years coming up in March. Started off as a graphic designer, and then probably 3 or 4 months into it, became the media director. And then been here ever since. Before that, I worked in the publishing industry, so I do a lot of print material stuff, some video presentations, training videos, things like that. But I have a music background from just way back when, and been in church all my life, so kind of been around the world for a little bit.
And Faith Assembly in Central Florida is one of the premier churches, one of the most influential churches around here. Tell me a little bit about kind of what your day-to-day is like.
Yeah, so I'm on the leadership team here now, so I do a lot of meetings now primarily, and I lead the team of people that do a lot of the things that I used to do, which is nice. They're a great team. But primarily I lead the design team that does audio, that does all the graphics and video stuff for the church and for the school. And then I also lead the production team, which does all the audio video lighting for both as well, and our campuses as well.
And how many people do you typically run on a Sunday morning in all your campuses?
Yeah, typically across all campuses, we're at 6,000.
Yeah.
It's a typical weekend. Yep.
Yeah, very cool. And tell me a little bit about your work with children's ministry, not necessarily as a children's minister, of course, but just kind of your interaction with children's ministry over the years.
Yeah, so we set up and operate many of the children areas that we have at our campuses. So we set up a lot of stuff, try to make stuff easy, try to make it rugged, able to be maintained. For especially rooms that we don't have an operator room in when during service, we kind of make it as simple as possible. And then we also use a lot of those rooms for other things, so we got to make it flexible to do kids ministry and other stuff. But yeah, I have 4 kids of my own, so they're all over the map as far as where they're at in kids ministry or now in youth as well. So we try to make sure that it's appealing to them and that it looks good and maintained well.
Yeah, so you've got kind of some skin in the game as far as children's ministry is concerned.
Absolutely. At one point, I had a kid in preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school. So I was a good test for anything that was going on in the organization.
Yeah. For sure. All right. So in this episode, we're talking about the criteria for choosing presentation software. Mm-hmm. Before we really dive in, I want to kind of do a bit of a bird's eye view on this conversation. And I guess what I want to know from your perspective is, do I need visuals media in kids' church? Why or why not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think across the board of visuals, not only in kids ministry, but across every age group, visuals are super important. They help reinforce messages. They help reinforce the theme, or they really capture people's imagination. There's a good book called Slideology that talks about how sometimes, people make presentations and there's a lot of text on there. There's a lot of, sometimes it's like, should this be a slide or should it be a handout? But you want something that really reinforces instead of just replaces what's being said audibly to anybody. So, but in kids ministry, it's very important for them to connect with what's going on. If you're telling a story, a lot of times it's a noisy environment in kids ministry. So you want something that actually captures their attention, keeps them focused on what you're talking about, and really reinforces what you're saying. So I strongly believe in it.
Is there a way that you see that even at home, the way that your kids respond to visuals?
Yeah, what's funny is sometimes when I walk into the living room and the kids will have the TV so quiet, I'm like, I can't even hear it, and I'm a sound guy, so and then, like, just for them to just see something and know what's going on, sometimes it's really important. The other thing we started doing with them early on is like charts and things like that, as they've developed, and that really reinforces, hey, did I clean my room today? Did I do my bed today? Did I brush my teeth today? Those kind of visuals really help reinforce habits and reinforce the message that we want to teach them.
Yeah. So let's focus in on this conversation about presentation software, presentation apps. Mm-hmm. What's the benefit in general? What's the benefit of using presentation software?
The big thing about presentation software specifically, other than the generic ones like Keynote and PowerPoint, is the ability to be flexible. When you're in live environment, you need to switch sometimes what you're doing. Having a good presentation software allows you to do that quickly. If you're doing stuff with sound effects or anything like that, you want to have something that you can quickly trigger something or quickly connect some things. And those kind of things you really can't do in some of the basic presentation softwares, but you can really do in some of the more advanced presentation softwares for sure. And that really helps in the operation of it.
Yeah. And, this next question, some of the answers are probably covered in what you said already. But now specifically, what's the benefit of using presentation software in kids' church or in kids' ministry?
Yeah, it's definitely that flexibility for sure. And then just having the ability to preset everything. If you're talking about multiple campuses, then you're sending, a bundled file over with all the assets ready to go. They're going to work. And then the ability to throw in things last minute. Let's say there's a missionary guest or some kind of guest that comes in and says, hey, can I throw this in? You don't have the luxury of like exiting the presentation, adding it, modifying it, moving windows across screens. You want something that's going to be ready to go and you can throw something in quickly and present it quickly.
So tell me about some of the presentation software that you've used in the past.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, we used to use Media Shout. I haven't kept up with it in a long time. But we primarily use ProPresenter here for sure.
Okay.
Across all our campuses. It's the best that we have found. Primarily on the Mac side. It's been solid. Some of the newer, more advanced features, I think they're still working on some kinks on, but we use it all over the place. And it's easy to send a tech from one room to the other, knowing that they're going to know ProPresenter really well.
Yeah, so if you're running the service in the sanctuary, but then the kids ministry has an issue, you can dispatch someone real quick. In looking for presentation software, what is it that helped you decide to go with ProPresenter?
Yeah, primarily the capabilities, the ability to play back, certain codecs and things like that, but also the update cycle. How often are they updating? How often they're keeping up with bugs and squashing them in the software code? Who else is using it? That's a big one. It's really I get calls and text messages on Sundays all the time from guys that are like, "Hey, I'm normally on lights, but my ProPresenter guy's not here. Can you help me out?" And it's just a thing that if other people know it, then you're able to ask them questions and go, "Hey, what do you guys think? What do you do for this situation? I'm getting this." And then you have somebody to talk to because they all use the same thing. So that's kind of one of those great benefits of using something that everyone else uses.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you say that because the criteria that we're talking about in this episode in choosing a presentation software, presentation app, is cost, ease of use,
Hmm.
and support. And support isn't necessarily just the company itself, but even the people that you have around you. You know,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
um, do you have, this is kind of an aside, but do you have any like pro presenter or presentation software nightmare scenarios that have happened?
um, primarily with other pieces of software. I mean, ProPresenter crashes occasionally if you try to do too much, or if you try to automate some things. But I've seen it, where somebody embeds a video in a PowerPoint or a Keynote, and they go to play it, and then it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It still happens in the corporate world all the time. I do some corporate events still, occasionally, and those little things of just not having the assurance that it's going to play back is a huge issue, and it'll ruin a
Yeah.
moment for sure. You're
Right.
trying to reinforce some kind of message, and then it's just gone. You spend more time trying to fix it than the people don't even remember what you said at that point. So yeah.
So for a kids ministry leader or kids
Hmm.
pastor, children's director that's looking at using some sort of software or presentation software for the first time,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
I would say number one, demo something. Get it into play. You have to feel comfortable with it. That's number one. You can't be like, hey, we use this thing because everyone uses it. Yes, that helps. But if you're not going to invest the time into knowing how it works and you being comfortable with it, I wouldn't go with it. Um, there's plenty of demos out there. Just demo something and feel comfortable in knowing how to troubleshoot it, knowing how it's actually right. Watch some training videos. There's plenty of training videos out there for every piece of software you can think of. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just be comfortable that you're using the technology
Mhm.
for. That way, if something goes wrong, you know how to either pivot or you know how to fix it right away. Just the little things. I've seen people call and just say, "Hey, every time I open up ProPresenter or another piece of software, they're like, it doesn't go to this TV the right way, it doesn't go to that the right way." And I'm like, hey, what if you turned on all the TVs first, or turn on the projectors first, or turn on the LED wall first, and then open up the ProPresenter? Does it still work? And those little things like that, those little tricks, you'll find out. You go, oh wait,
Yeah.
yeah, it does work every single time. Now that I've not started the software first and turn on the displays first and things like that. Just computers are computers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, going off of that, are there any like checks that you do throughout the week to make sure that you're ready to go for Sunday morning?
Yeah, our biggest thing is feedback. So, like, especially if you're being like in kids ministry, if you're being supported by a technical department, I would say just give feedback early. I tell the guys early and often.
Mhm.
So don't wait till Friday at 4 p.m. Check. Hey, we had an issue on Sunday. Oh, really? That should be a Monday or a Tuesday
Mhm.
thing for sure. So we can go in and lots of times it's, hey, this file we got off the internet and it's corrupted, or hey, this file is 4K file and you're trying to pump it to a 720 projector. And of course, it's going to crash, or this
Mhm.
audio file is pretty sketch. There's little things like that. And
Yeah.
there's bunch of software that'll help you transcode all that stuff to the right stuff. But I would say if you're being supported by another ministry, as soon as you have an issue, try and get it out there. Get on the forums. I've seen
Mhm.
plenty of people on forums going, "Hey, ProPresenter does this, or PowerPoint does this. What can I do to remedy it?" You'll usually find an answer.
Is there advice that you would give to a kids ministry leader on interacting with the media team or the tech team?
Yeah, not just kids ministry, but every ministry
Mhm.
is that early and often thing. Just
Mhm. Yeah.
remember that we have lives and we have families as well, but also that it's going to sometimes take us time to figure out what's going on. And then if
Sure.
it's an intermittent problem, just know that it may not get fixed the following week. It may take, we sometimes we need stuff to crash often that we can recreate the crash.
Yeah.
Hey,
Right.
the more you know about what's going on, the better. So it's like, hey, when that crashed, what were we doing? Were we playing a song? Were we playing a video? What time of day was it? Was somebody leaning on a keyboard? Were there a lot of people in the room? Did you have something plugged in? was the hazer going? Were the lights moving? Those little things, believe it or not, or we had an issue once where every time a refrigerator would start chilling, it would cause a buzz in an audio system. Happened to be on the same leg of power, and we were able to find that, but we had to like really pinpoint that for a few months. But I would say on the interaction side, it's just early and often, and just try not to treat techs like custodians. Nothing wrong with custodians. I love them. But we're not just there to clean up, but we want to solve what's going on and help you guys do your stuff as well as you can, and do ministry.
Yeah, and from my time in ministry, it feels like the tech team tends to be the most servant-hearted. Sometimes the most crotchety.
Yes.
Every now and again.
We're all Enneagram 5, so we have a little bit of sarcasm in everything we say.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
For a ministry leader that does not have a support team, are there resources that you recommend for them to learn about the presentation software?
Absolutely. YouTube is definitely the best. On the Pro Presenter side specifically, Brad Zimmerman, he does all the training stuff for Renewed Vision. He doesn't work for them technically, like, on an ongoing basis, but he does the training videos on their website. They're fantastic. We happen to be friends, but he's a great resource for that stuff. There's a lot of guys doing Pro Presenter stuff right now, but also Brad's in ministry, so he knows the ins and outs of that stuff, and he's doing that at his church, which is really great. It's not just the company telling you, here's how to use it. It's more, he's going to give you some examples of how to do it. The other thing I would say is make friends with an integrator, some kind of integration company that does AV, or even content creation. I just think having somebody to text or call on a Sunday morning is super vital. We've had our integrators show up at a campus with a PoE switch to solve a problem on a Sunday morning in his robe. It's just, you don't get that from a website necessarily. You're not going to go to Sweetwater and call them on a Sunday morning and go, hey, can you guys come over? So just remember, sometimes the prices might be a little bit higher, but I think it's worth having that relationship with a company that's local that can help you know what gear to get, know how to integrate it. And then they also know churches that will help in, hey, I have a problem. Oh, I'm not sure because I don't operate it weekly, but they'll connect you with somebody that does. And that's always super valuable. So I've made a lot of connections that way through our integrator.
Yeah, that's great too, because it's like, even if you are alone, you're not alone. There's relationships and community members that you can lean on. As we prepare to kind of wrap things up, give me some final thoughts on this process of kids ministry leader searching for a presentation software.
Yeah, I would say definitely do some planning, some testing on software. Feel comfortable with what you're doing. Don't do it just because you think it's a fad or whatever, but really get in there and push all the buttons and check all the menus and see what shortcuts there are, and then go on YouTube and see what people are doing with it. If there is some automation that you want to do and you want to test it out, that's the best way to do it. Do it off hours. Don't try to do something brand new during a service necessarily. Maybe during a holiday weekend, maybe, but definitely try it out. Feel comfortable with it. Know the ins and outs of it so that you can troubleshoot on the fly, and then be ready to pivot. If technology doesn't work, then be ready to do something else and not make a big deal about it and just move on. And then if you do have a support team, for sure, if there's something wrong, I would say early and often.
So Jonathan, if people want to reach out to you, if they want to kind of see what you're doing or even ask any questions, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so you could email me. You can go to faithassembly.org and see my email address there. It's perezj@faithassembly.org. Feel free to email me. It may take me a few days to get back to you, but I will try my hardest. Or you can follow me on Instagram at PerezJonathan1.
Thank you for joining us on the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart. I want you to know that your Kids Church visuals matter. When I was a kids and youth pastor, it felt like my ministry was the world's most unsolvable Rubik's Cube. Every time I tried to fix one thing, I messed up a bunch of other things. You try to make things better for one person, and someone else gets upset. Or you spend time perfecting one thing, and there are a bunch of other things that get forgotten about. And there were times when, no matter how hard I twisted and I turned, it only seemed to make things worse. But that's because I was trying to do things by myself and in my own power. I had to learn to rely on God and the people that He had placed around me. For ministry leaders and teams that are struggling with their visuals, you've got this. God has placed you where you are with a purpose, with a plan. I believe that as you continue to serve and minister faithfully, God is going to send you the people that you need to do what He's called you to do.
This has been a podcast presentation of Church Visuals. Executive produced by Carl Barnhill. Hosted and edited by Sheik Mozart. Title and show graphics by Jason Merrick. For more training to help you visually communicate the gospel in your children's ministry, visit churchvisuals.com.